I pushed open my bedroom door and froze. Two men in paint-splattered overalls were covering my peach-colored walls with thick brushes. My floral curtains lay in a heap on the floor. My dresser had been moved to the middle of the room, with cans of dripping paint sitting on top of the lacquered wood I'd restored myself. Ryan, my 35-year-old son, leaned against the doorframe with his arms crossed, grinning as if he'd just told the funniest joke in the world. Beside him, Jennifer, my daughter-in-law, was scrolling on her phone with that smug expression she got when she won. The brush and the air froze when they saw me. The younger painter looked at me with an uncomfortable expression, as if I'd interrupted something private. The smell of fresh paint made me dizzy, mixing with the rage that was starting to boil in my chest. What is the meaning of this? My voice came out weaker than I wanted. I had just gotten home after a 12-hour shift in the kitchen of the Cookery, a place I'd spent 15 years preparing meals for families, celebrating birthdays, all while scalding my fingers on boiling oil. My feet ached in my worn shoes. My back protested from the hours bent over the stoves, but none of that mattered now. Jennifer looked up from her phone and gave me that fake sweet smile she used when she wanted something. "Oh, Mom, you're home early. We're just making a few changes before we move in." Her voice was casual, as if she were commenting on the weather. Ryan straightened up and walked toward me with that confidence that had always intimidated me. "Mom, we wanted to surprise you. You know, this room is too big for just you, and we need more space. The kids are growing, and our apartment is just too small." My legs started to tremble. I had worked for 20 years in that hellish kitchen to save every single dollar to buy this house. For 20 years, I breathed grill smoke, endured rants from cranky customers, and scrubbed grease until late hours, all to have a place that was mine, where I could rest without having to ask anyone for permission. The older painter coughed uncomfortably. "Ma'am, if there's a problem, we can stop and come back tomorrow." No, keep going." Jennifer waved her hand as if she owned the place. "We've already paid. Might as well finish today." I knew the answer. The money I had lent them last month when Ryan lost his job at the factory. The money I had taken from my savings because my daughter-in-law begged me through tears to help them with the rent. Ryan came closer and put his hand on my shoulder with a familiarity that no longer comforted me. "Mom, don't get like this. It's just paint. Plus, we've already talked to an architect. We can divide the house into 2 parts. You'll have your space, and we'll have ours. Like one big happy family. One big happy family." The words sounded hollow, like an echo in an empty room. I looked at my wrinkled curtains on the floor, the ones I had sewn myself with fabric I bought after 3 weeks of saving my tips. I looked at the growing paint stain on my dresser, the one I had found at a garage sale and sanded and varnished for 2 whole weekends. "And who decided this?" I asked, my voice starting to get some strength back. "When did you sit down and plan the future of my house without consulting me?" Jennifer sighed dramatically and put away her phone. "Mom, don't be so dramatic. You always get so difficult when we try to do something nice. Look at this ugly color you had. The white is going to look beautiful, you'll see." Beautiful for whom? I wanted to scream. I had chosen that peach color after days of comparing samples at the paint store. It reminded me of the sunsets I used to watch from the window of my old rented room when I dreamed of having my own walls that I could paint any color I wanted. The painters kept working, pretending not to hear our argument, but I felt their uncomfortable glances every time we raised our voices. Ryan walked around the room like an inspector checking his property. "Mom, look. It's going to be so much brighter. And when we bring our furniture in, you'll see what a huge difference it makes." Jennifer already found a beautiful bedroom set on sale. Their furniture in my room, in the space I had filled with my own things, each with its own story, each bought with the sweat of my hands wrinkled by the detergents from the commercial kitchen. Jennifer went over to the vanity where I kept my cheap perfumes and my creams for dry hands. "Oh, and all this mess we can organize better. You don't need so many things, Mom. When you get older, you have to start simplifying your life." Simplify my life. As if my little treasures were trash cluttering up their plans, as if my 67 years had turned me into an annoying tenant in my own house. I felt something break inside me. It wasn't just the fresh paint covering my beloved walls or the furniture moved without my permission. It was the way they had decided my future so naturally, as if I were an old piece of furniture that had to be put in the least visible corner. And just like that, everything started to crumble. But let me tell you how I got here, so you understand why. That afternoon, watching those strangers paint my sanctuary, I knew it was time to defend myself, even if it meant losing the only family I had left. My name is Madison, and I am 67 years old. For the last 15 years, I have worked in the kitchen of the Cookery, a place where families go to celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, and graduations while I sweat behind the stoves preparing their favorite dishes. I get there at 5 in the morning to prepare the chicken stock that simmers for hours, and I leave at 7 at night with my uniform soaked in grease and my hair smelling of fried onions. Before the Cookery, I worked in 3 other restaurants, always in the kitchen, always invisible to the customers who enjoyed my food without knowing who prepared it. My hands are marked with small scars from hot pans and knives that slipped when I was rushing during peak hours. My nails, which I once kept painted pink, I now keep short and unpolished because it's more sanitary for handling food. I was widowed 12 years ago. David died of a heart attack while watching television on a Sunday afternoon. He was a good man who worked his whole life in a furniture factory and left me with more beautiful memories than money in the bank. After his funeral, I stayed in the apartment we had been renting since we got married, paying $550 a month to a landlord who raised the rent every year without improving a single thing. Ryan was different when he was a boy, a shy kid who would hug me when I got home from work, tired, and help me fold the laundry while he told me about his day at school. But something changed when he met Jennifer. She came into his life like a hurricane, full of big plans and expensive dreams. She talked about trips to Europe, new cars and houses in fancy neighborhoods where important people lived. At first, I thought it was good that my son had an ambitious woman beside him. David had always been content, happy with little, and I was afraid Ryan had inherited that same tranquility that was sometimes confused with a lack of ambition. But I soon discovered that Jennifer's dreams came with a price that others had to pay. When they got married, I lent them $1,000 for the party. Money. I had saved penny by penny, keeping it in a cookie tin because I didn't trust banks. They promised to pay me back in 6 months. That was 8 years ago. When their first child was born, they asked me for another $800 for hospital expenses. When the second one came, they needed $100 to buy a used crib and stroller. There was always an emergency, always a promise to pay me back soon. I never asked them for the money. A mother doesn't charge her son interest, I would tell myself. But deep down, I knew my generosity had become their convenience. It was easier to ask Mom than to find extra jobs or live with fewer luxuries. Working in a restaurant teaches you to be strong. When the chef yells at you because a dish took 2 extra minutes, when the servers blame you because a customer complained about the temperature of the soup, when your swollen feet are begging for a break, but you have 5 hours left in your shift, you learn that no one is going to defend you if you don't defend yourself first. You also learn the value of money. Every dollar they paid me represented half an hour of standing in front of a hot grill or washing huge pots with water so hot it made my hands red up to my elbows. That's why I saved everything I could. A few dollars from weekend tips when I worked overtime on holidays, $50 when the restaurant had a special event, and we got bonuses. I lived on the bare minimum: secondhand clothes, simple food I cooked at home, entertainment limited to free television shows. On Sundays, my only day off, I would walk around the flea market looking for useful and cheap things. That's where I found my dresser for $30, the one that now had white paint stains on top of it. After David's death, loneliness became my constant companion. I would get home from work tired, and there was no one waiting for me with a hot cup of tea or asking me how my day was. Weekends felt endless. Ryan would visit every now and then, always with Jennifer and the kids, but their visits felt more like inspections. They would check my refrigerator, comment on how small the apartment was, and suggest that it was time for me to think about moving into a senior living community. As if being 67 years old had automatically turned me into someone incapable of making my own decisions. Jennifer had a special way of making me feel old and outdated. She would talk about phone apps I didn't understand, trendy places she had eaten, and important people she had met at Ryan's job. She always ended her stories with a condescending smile and a pat on my hand. "Oh, Mom, what would you know about these modern things?" But I knew things she didn't know. I knew how to make a $1,200 a month paycheck last for 30 whole days. I knew how to get tough stains out of clothes and how to repair broken appliances with patience and ingenuity. I knew how to work 12 hours straight without complaining and how to save money, even when it seemed impossible. For years, my dream had been to own my own home. Not something big or luxurious, just a place where I could paint the walls any color I wanted, where I could plant flowers in the garden, and where I could invite my friends from work over for coffee without asking a landlord for permission. A place that was completely mine, where no one could tell me they were raising the rent or that I had to move out. That dream became more urgent after the new owner of my building decided to renovate all the apartments. We had 3 months to vacate or accept a rent increase of $200 a month. For me, that $200 represented the difference between living with dignity and counting every penny to make it to the end of the month. It was then that I made the decision that would change everything. For 30 years, I had been secretly saving money. Not just the money Ryan and Jennifer knew I had, but other money. Money I had saved coin by coin, bill by bill, hidden in places no one else knew about. When I counted it all, I had $3,800. Money that represented years of not buying myself new shoes, of cooking at home instead of ordering out, of walking instead of taking the bus when the weather allowed. Every bill had a story of sacrifice behind it. The day I decided to look for a house was a Tuesday morning. I had woken up with a strange determination, as if something inside me had awakened after years of being asleep. I got dressed in my best clothes, counted my money one more time, and went out to tour neighborhoods where houses were within my budget. The first house I saw was in a quiet neighborhood 40 minutes by bus from the restaurant. It was small, with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a tiny kitchen, and a backyard. The exterior paint was peeling, the windows needed repair, and the front yard was more weeds than grass, but it had something that made me fall in love with it immediately. A big window in the master bedroom faced east, perfect for watching the sunrise. The real estate agent, a young man in a fancy suit with a salesman's smile, looked me up and down when I said I was interested. "Mom, this property costs $35,000. Are you pre-approved for a mortgage?" "I don't need a loan," I replied. "I can pay in cash." His expression changed completely. Suddenly, I was no longer an old woman wasting his time, but a serious client. He showed me every corner of the house, explaining the advantages of each room. But I had already made up my mind from the moment I saw that window. For years, I had woken up in dark rooms where sunlight was filtered by taller buildings. Here, I could have my morning coffee watching the day be born. I could have plants on the windowsill. I could feel alive instead of just functional. That same afternoon, I made an offer of $30,000. The seller accepted immediately. The legal paperwork took 3 weeks. 3 weeks during which I didn't tell anyone, not Ryan, not Jennifer, not even Joanna, my coworker. Every night after getting home from the restaurant, I would sit and imagine what it would be like to live in my own house. The day I signed the final papers, my hands were shaking, not from nerves, but from excitement. At 65 years old, for the first time in my life, I was going to have something that was completely mine, something no one could take away, where no one could raise the rent or tell me what I could or couldn't do. When I received the keys, I stood in front of the door for several minutes before opening it. The house was empty and smelled of dampness. But it was mine. I walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, testing the light switches, and opening and closing the windows. In the master bedroom, I stood in front of that window I had liked so much and smiled for the first time in months. That night, I slept on the floor of my new house, wrapped in a blanket I had brought from the rented apartment. I didn't have any furniture yet, but I had something better. I had the certainty that every inch of that place belonged to me. The problem started when I decided to tell Ryan and Jennifer. I invited them to dinner the following Sunday. I cooked their favorite dish, chicken mole, which took me 3 hours to prepare, and set the table with my nicest plates. I wanted it to be a celebration, a special occasion where I would share my achievement with the only people I considered family. Ryan arrived in a bad mood. He had lost his job at the factory the week before for being late repeatedly, and he was frustrated because his job interviews weren't going well. Jennifer arrived complaining about the traffic, the heat, and how the kids had been unbearable all week. I waited until after dessert to give them the news. "I have something important to tell you," I said, trying to sound casual but excited. Jennifer sighed. "Oh, Mom, I hope you're not about to get sentimental. We have enough problems of our own." "No, it's not that. It's something good. I bought a house." The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it. Ryan paused his fork halfway to his mouth. Jennifer looked at me as if I had announced I was going to marry an extraterrestrial. "You bought a house?" Ryan asked finally. "A small house in the neighborhood of St. Vincent. 2 bedrooms, a yard. It's perfect for me." Jennifer straightened up in her chair. "With what money? Where did you get $30,000? "I had been saving for years," I explained. "Money from my job, tips, small amounts that I had been putting away." Jennifer's expression changed from surprise to something I couldn't immediately identify. It was a mix of anger and disappointment, as if my independence were a personal betrayal to her. "Mom, why didn't you tell us anything?" Ryan asked. "We could have helped you find something better, a place more in the city, safer. I didn't need help." "I already found what I wanted." "This is unbelievable," Jennifer yelled. "We're over here struggling to pay rent, borrowing money for the kids' expenses, and you had thousands of dollars hidden away this whole time." "They weren't hidden. They were saved." "It's the same thing," Jennifer yelled. "Do you know how many times we've needed money? How many times we've had to borrow pennies from you when you had a fortune stashed away?" Ryan tried to calm her down, but I could see in his eyes that he thought the same thing. For them, my money had always been a resource available for their emergencies. The idea that I had my own goals, my own dreams, hadn't crossed their minds. "Besides," Jennifer continued, "you're not so young anymore to live alone. What's going to happen if you get sick, if you fall and there's no one to help you?" "I'm perfectly fine," I replied. "I work 8 hours a day. I handle my own affairs. I don't need supervision." But Jennifer had already found her argument. The seed she would plant that night would grow to become the justification for everything that would happen later. "Mom, at this age, you have to be practical. It would be much smarter if you sold that house and came to live with us. We could use the money to buy a bigger house where we all fit comfortably." There it was. Not 10 minutes had passed since they learned of my accomplishment, and they were already planning how to take advantage of it. Moving into my new house took 3 full weekends. Since I didn't have money to hire a moving company, I had to transport my belongings little by little on the public bus. Each trip, I would carry 2 large bags full of clothes, books, and the small treasures I had accumulated over the years. The bus drivers knew me by then, and some of them would even help me lift the heavier bags. The hardest part was moving my small refrigerator and my washing machine. For that, I had to ask for help from Joe, Joanna's brother, who had an old but functional pickup truck. I paid him $50 for the favor, money he needed more than I did, but it represented my independence. Seeing my appliances and my own kitchen was worth every penny. My first few months in the house were the happiest I remembered living. I woke up every morning with the sun coming in through my favorite window. After work, instead of arriving at an apartment that smelled like other tenants' food, I would arrive at a house that smelled like the scented candles I would buy myself every now and then as a personal gift. I had planted flowers in the front yard, purple petunias and white daisies that I bought on sale at the local nursery. I didn't know much about gardening, but I learned by watching videos at the public library on Sundays. The kitchen was my favorite place. It was small, but perfectly organized according to my needs. After years of working in chaotic commercial kitchens, having an orderly and quiet space to prepare my own food was an indescribable luxury. On weekends, I dedicated myself to improving the house with the money I had left over from my paycheck. I bought paint on sale and painted the living room a soft yellow that reminded me of my grandmother's kitchen. Each can of paint cost $12, but it completely transformed the atmosphere of each room. I learned to fix things by watching internet tutorials at the library. When the faucet in the sink broke, instead of calling a plumber, I bought the necessary parts for $15 and fixed it myself. When one of the windows wouldn't close properly, I sanded down the swollen wood and adjusted it until it worked perfectly. Ryan and Jennifer came to visit me twice during the first few months. Both times they arrived with a critical attitude that dampened my joy. The first visit was 3 weeks after I moved in. They showed up without warning on a Saturday afternoon when I was in the yard planting some red geraniums. "Mom, this neighborhood looks kinda rough," was the first thing Ryan said when he got out of the car. "There are houses with broken fences and some of the yards are full of weeds." Jennifer walked through the house with a look of disgust, touching the freshly painted walls as if they were made of cardboard. "This kitchen is way too small. Where are you going to put your stuff when you have guests? And this bathroom needs a complete renovation. The tile looks so old. I liked my bathroom." The tile was from the 70s, but it was in perfect condition, and I had cleaned it until it shined. The towels I had bought on sale matched the green of the walls perfectly. The second visit was worse. They arrived during a heavy rain and found a small leak in the ceiling of the guest bedroom. Instead of offering to help me fix it, Jennifer took the opportunity to make a list of everything that was wrong with the house. "Look at this, Mom. This house is falling apart. See this moisture stain? That's going to get worse until all the wood rots, and these old windows don't insulate at all. Your electricity bills are going to be so expensive in the winter." Ryan joined in with his criticism with an exaggerated concern for my safety. "Mom, this neighborhood isn't safe for an older woman living alone. The house on the corner has broken windows, and there are abandoned cars on some of the streets." "What are you going to do if there are burglars? Those are the same worries I would have anywhere," I replied. "And here, at least, I own my space." But their words planted a seed of doubt that grew every time I heard a strange noise at night. The maintenance expenses were constant but manageable. $20 to change a pipe that started to drip, $5 to buy materials and fix the leak in the roof myself, $40 to hire an electrician to check an outlet that had started sparking. Every expense hurt, not because I didn't have the money, but because it reduced my savings that had cost me so much to accumulate. But for every dollar I spent on repairs, I saved more by not paying rent. My monthly expenses had dropped from $850 rent plus utilities in the apartment to $450 just utilities and maintenance. That $400 extra every month gave me a feeling of security I had never experienced. With that extra money, I was able to buy things I had considered unreachable luxuries for years. A new television to replace the one I had inherited from David, which already had a scratched screen. A set of good quality sheets that wouldn't fray after 3 washes. A small coffee maker that let me have freshly brewed coffee every morning instead of instant. I also started inviting Joanna over for lunch on Sundays. She was a widow too. She lived in a small apartment with her older sister, and she valued having a quiet place to talk without interruptions. We would cook together, talk about our jobs, our aches and pains, and the television shows we liked. It was the first time in years that I had a real friendship, not just work camaraderie. Joanna helped me understand that what Ryan and Jennifer were doing had a name: financial abuse. "Oh, Madison," she told me one Sunday while we were drying dishes, "your kids see you as a piggy bank with legs. Every time they need money, they know they can just smash the glass and take whatever they need." Her words hurt because I recognized the truth in them. For years, I had justified their constant requests for money as legitimate needs. But now that I had physical distance from them, I could see the pattern more clearly. They never paid back the money I lent them. They never invited me out to eat to reciprocate all the times I had paid when we went out together. They never gave me gifts for my birthday or on Mother's Day, but they did expect me to be generous on their birthdays and at Christmas. But I also started to notice something more worrying. The visits had become more frequent, and each time they came with more criticism of my house and my decision to live independently. Jennifer had started making comments about my age and my ability to take care of myself alone. "Mom, yesterday my friend Rose told me that her mom fell at her house and was on the floor for 3 hours before anyone found her. What would you do if something like that happened to you?" Rose was Jennifer's neighbor who was 85 years old and had balance problems. I was 67 years old and worked 8 hours a day on my feet in a commercial kitchen. The comparison was ridiculous, but Jennifer repeated it every time she came to visit. Ryan had started making more direct suggestions about selling the house. "Mom, I've been thinking if you sold this house right now, you could easily get $40,000. Prices have gone up since you bought it. With that money, we could buy a bigger house where we could all live comfortably. We could all live comfortably." As if my comfort was a secondary factor in the equation. But the real pressure started when Ryan lost his second job in 6 months. After 8 months of living in my house, I decided to have a small celebration to show my friends and family what I had accomplished. It wasn't a big party, just a Sunday lunch for the most important people in my life. I invited Joanna and her sister Lillian, Vincent the electrician who had helped me with repairs and had become a good friend, Ryan and Jennifer with the kids, and Tatiana, my cousin, who lived on the other side of town and hadn't seen my house yet. I spent 2 weeks preparing everything. I cleaned the house until every surface shined. I planted new flowers in the front yard and even had a small crack in the exterior wall repaired. I wanted everything to look perfect. The menu was planned with the same care I put into special banquets at the restaurant. Red mole with chicken that I started preparing the previous Saturday, rice and beans that I cooked over low heat for hours. And for dessert, tres leches cake, which was my specialty. I spent $10 on ingredients, more than I spent on food during 2 normal weeks, but it was worth it for this special occasion. I set the table with white tablecloths I had bought on sale, plates that matched, and fresh flowers from the garden in a vase I had found at a garage sale. It wasn't elegant like the tables Jennifer photographed at the expensive restaurant she sometimes went to with her friends. But it had something those tables would never have. It was completely mine. Joanna and Lillian arrived first, carrying a tray of empanadas they had made as a contribution. Vincent arrived with a bottle of cheap but decent wine and a small bag that contained some pots of aromatic herbs for my garden. Tatiana arrived half an hour late, but with a huge smile and a hug that lasted several seconds. "Oh, cousin, this house is beautiful," Tatiana exclaimed as she walked from room to room admiring every detail. "I can't believe it's yours. Do you remember when we were kids and we played house under Grandma's table? You said that when you grew up you were going to have a house with a garden full of flowers." Yes, I remembered. It had been my dream since I was 8 years old when I helped my grandmother water her plants, and she promised me that one day I would have my own garden. Almost 60 years had passed, but I had finally done it. The food was perfect. The mole had the exact balance of spicy and sweet that had taken me years to perfect. The rice was fluffy and flavorful. The tortillas were hot and soft. My guests ate with the appetite of people who appreciated good home cooking, not as a social obligation, but as true pleasure. Vincent complimented my seasoning. "Madison, this mole is better than my mom's, and that's saying a lot. I don't know how you do it, but every time I taste your food, I remember why I decided to become an electrician instead of a cook." Joanna raised her glass of soda to make a toast. To Madison, who shows us that it's never too late to fulfill our dreams, who teaches us that a strong woman can achieve anything she sets her mind to. Everyone toasted and applauded. I felt so proud that my eyes filled with tears. It was the first time in my life that anyone had given public recognition to my achievements. Ryan and Jennifer arrived an hour late when we had already finished the main course and were serving the dessert. They came in with a quick apology about the traffic and sat in the chairs I had saved for them, but their cold attitude contrasted with the warm atmosphere we had created. Jennifer greeted everyone with forced smiles and superficial comments about how pretty the table looked, but I knew her well enough to notice the critical glances she was giving every detail. The way she touched the tablecloths as if evaluating their quality, how she checked the plates as if looking for flaws, and how she looked at the vase with flowers from the garden with an expression that suggested she found them common. Ryan ate in silence, responding with monosyllables when someone asked him questions about his job or the kids. The kids, restless after the car ride, ran around the house, touching everything without their parents setting any limits. Tatiana, who didn't know Ryan and Jennifer well, tried to include them in the conversation. "You must be so proud of Madison. Not everyone has the determination to save so much money and buy their own house at 65. Jennifer smiled with that fake smile she used to seem nice, but she was annoyed. Yes, of course, although we would have preferred she consulted us before making such an important decision. At this age, living alone can be dangerous. The comment fell like a stone in the middle of the celebration. Vincent, who knew very well my ability to take care of myself after seeing how I fix things in my house, frowned. "Excuse me, but Madison is one of the most independent people I know. She works more hours than most people half her age." Jennifer straightened up in her chair, interpreting Vincent's words as a challenge. "Well, you don't know the whole situation. We're the family. We know what's best for her." Joanna put her fork down on the plate with more force than necessary. "And what's best for her, according to you? That she live in a place where she has support, where she's not alone if something happens. This house is way out here in a neighborhood that isn't the safest." Lillian, who was a straightforward woman with no patience for diplomacy, intervened. "Excuse me, but Madison seems perfectly capable of making her own decisions, and from what I can see, this house is in excellent condition." Ryan finally spoke, but his words were worse than his silence. "The thing is, you guys don't understand the full situation. My mom spent all her savings on this house, money she could have used to secure her future. If she gets sick, if she needs special care, what is she going to pay with?" "I have health insurance," I replied, feeling my joy evaporating like water in a hot pan. "And I have a job. I'm not an invalid." But Jennifer had already found her rhythm. "Mom, don't be offended, but you're not at an age to be lifting heavy pots and working on your feet for hours. One of these days, you're going to get hurt, and then what are we going to do?" Vincent got up from the table, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation had taken. "Madison, thank you so much for the food and the hospitality. Everything was delicious, but I think it's time for me to go." Tatiana also got up, but before she left, she came close and whispered in my ear, "Cousin, don't let anyone take what you worked so hard to get. This house is yours, and your life is yours." Joanna and Lillian left soon after, but before they went out the door, Joanna squeezed my hand tightly. "If you need anything at all, you call me. You're not alone in this." When it was just Ryan, Jennifer, the kids, and me, the atmosphere became heavy like a storm cloud. Jennifer got up to wash the dishes without me asking her to, but she did it with rough movements that made her bad mood clear. "Mom, we need to talk," Ryan said when the kids went out to the yard to play. I sat on my favorite couch and waited to hear what they had to say. Jennifer dried her hands and sat down in front of me with her arms crossed. "Mom, let's be honest. This situation can't go on like this." "What situation?" "You living alone, spending money on a house that's too big for your needs while we're struggling to make ends meet?" There it was. The real reason for their annoyance wasn't my safety or my well-being. It was that I had something they wanted and couldn't have. Ryan came closer and sat on the arm of my chair using that physical proximity that he knew made me uncomfortable to pressure me. "Mom, we've been thinking, what if we sell this house and buy a bigger one where we can all live comfortably? You would have your own room, but you would have company, and we could help you with the expenses and maintenance." "I don't want to sell my house," I said in the firmest voice I could. Jennifer sighed with exaggeration. "Mom, be practical. With what this house is worth, plus what we can contribute, we could buy something much better in a nicer, safer neighborhood. This house is perfect for me." "But not for us," Jennifer murmured so low I barely heard her. That night after they left, I sat in my garden and thought about what had happened. My moment of celebration had been ruined by the greed of the two people who were supposed to love me most in the world. But I had also learned something valuable. I had true friends who respected my decisions and valued my independence. The war had just begun. 3 weeks after the lunch, Ryan lost his job at the insurance company. It was the third job he had lost in 2 years, always for the same reason: tardiness, unjustified absences, and an unprofessional attitude. But according to him, all his bosses had been unfair. All his co-workers were envious of him, and the world was conspiring against him. The call came on a Tuesday night when I had just gotten home from the restaurant and was soaking my swollen feet in warm salt water. Ryan sounded desperate on the phone, like a child who had broken something valuable and needed his mom to fix it. "Mom, I got fired from work today. My boss said it was because I was late 3 times this month, but it's not fair. The traffic is impossible, and besides, I'm having problems with the car." "What are you going to do now?" I asked, even though I already knew where the conversation was going. "I don't know, Mom. I have to pay rent next week, and I don't have anything. The kids need school supplies, and Jennifer says that if we don't pay soon, they're going to kick us out of the apartment." I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, that mix of guilt and resentment I always got when Ryan had money problems. As a mother, my instinct was to protect him, help him, and solve his problems. But as a woman who had worked her whole life to get stability, it bothered me that at 35 years old, he still expected me to be his financial lifeline. "Ryan, you need to find another job quickly. There are a lot of places that are hiring." "I know, Mom, but in the meantime, I need help. Can you lend me money for the rent?" "It's $800. I'll pay you back as soon as I find a job." $800. Almost 2 months of my house maintenance expenses. Money I had sweated for during a full week of work at the restaurant, waking up at 5:30 in the morning and getting home at 8 at night with burned hands and an aching back. "Ryan, I've already lent you a lot of money this year. You need to learn to manage your expenses." "Mom, please." "It's an emergency. Do you want my kids to be left on the street?" The emotional manipulation that always worked. The grandmother guilt that couldn't stand the idea of her grandchildren suffering for their parents' mistakes. But this time, sitting in my own house, surrounded by things I had bought with my own effort, something inside me rebelled. "Your children are not going to be left on the street. You are going to find a way to solve your problem like the adult you are." The silence on the other end of the line lasted for several seconds. When Ryan spoke again, his voice had a tone I had never heard before, cold and calculating. "Okay, Mom, I get it. I see what your priorities are now." "What do you mean by that?" "That ever since you bought that house, you've become selfish. Before, you always helped us when we needed it. But now that you have your little palace, you've forgotten you have family." The words hurt like a slap. Selfish for wanting to keep the money I had earned with my work. Selfish for having fulfilled a dream that had taken me decades to achieve. Selfish for not wanting to continue being the personal bank for my grown children. "I'm not selfish, Ryan. I'm a woman who worked her whole life to have a little security in her old age." "Mom, you're 67 years old. What do you need so much money for? What do you need such a big house for? It would be so much smarter for you to come live with us and sell that house. With that money, we could buy something better for everyone." There it was again. The same proposal they had been making since I bought the house, but now with more urgency because they needed money immediately. "I'm not going to sell my house, Ryan, but you're spending it all on silly things. Yesterday, Jennifer told me she saw you bought new plants for the garden. What good are plants when your son doesn't have a job? What good were plants?" As if beauty, joy, the pride of owning something weren't good for anything. The conversation ended with Ryan hanging up on me, something he had never done before. I was left with the phone in my hand, listening to the dial tone, feeling that something important had changed between us forever. 2 days later, they showed up at my house without warning. It was Friday afternoon. I had just gotten home from work when I heard a knock at the door. I thought it was Vincent, but when I opened it, I found Ryan, Jennifer, and the 2 kids standing on my porch. "Surprise," Jennifer said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We came to visit." They walked in without waiting for an invitation. The kids ran straight to the backyard. Ryan carried a small bag, and Jennifer had that owner of the house attitude that made me nervous. "What's in that bag?" I asked. "Well, Mom, since you didn't want to help us with the money, the landlord gave us 3 days to vacate the apartment. So, we decided to come stay with you while we look for something cheaper." My heart stopped. Stay with me in my house, in the refuge I had worked so hard to get. "No," I said immediately, "you can't stay here." Jennifer sat on my couch as if she hadn't heard my refusal. "Why not? You have 2 bedrooms, and we're family. It's the least you can do after refusing to help us. Because this is my house, and I decide who lives here." Ryan put the bag on the floor and looked at me with that look of exaggerated disappointment he had used to manipulate me since he was a teenager. "Mom, are you seriously going to leave us on the street?" "Your own grandchildren. I'm not leaving you on the street. You made decisions that led you to this situation. You can look for another apartment. You can ask Jennifer's family for help. You can do 1,000 things before invading my space." Jennifer got up from the couch with a dramatic flourish. "Invading your space. Listen to how she talks to her own family. We who have always taken care of her, who have always been there for her. When have you taken care of me? When have you been there for me? I'm the one who has always helped you." "Oh, Mom, don't exaggerate. Don't you remember when you were sick with the flu last year and Ryan went to buy you medicine? One time, just one time, in 12 years of being a widow, Ryan had gone to the pharmacy for me when I had a high fever. That's not enough to justify you taking over my house." Ryan came up to me with that condescending smile I hated. "Mom, don't be dramatic. We're not taking over anything. We just need a place to stay for a few weeks while we find something permanent. A few weeks that would turn into months and months into years. I knew it." "The answer is no. You can't stay here for a single night." Jennifer changed her tactic from pleading to direct attack. "Fine, Mom. We understand what you're really like. But don't forget that when you're old and you need someone to take care of you, you'll remember this moment. Are you threatening me?" "I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you the truth. Family is supposed to help each other, but you only think about yourself." They left that night, but not before Jennifer made one last observation that chilled me to the bone. "Mom, this house is too big for you alone, and the neighborhood isn't safe. One of these days you're going to need someone to take care of you, and I hope we have the heart to do it after how you're treating us." That night, I couldn't sleep, not from guilt, but from fear. For the first time since I bought the house, I felt that my refuge was threatened. I knew Ryan and Jennifer well enough to know they wouldn't give up easily. If they couldn't get my money with tears, they would try with pressure. The war had officially begun. The first sign that something was wrong was the sound of keys in my lock on a Saturday morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard that familiar metallic jingle, followed by the sound of my front door opening. But it was impossible. I had the only keys to my house. I came out of the kitchen with the coffee cup in my hand, and I found Ryan standing in my living room smiling as if he had every right in the world to be there. "Morning, Mom. I came early to talk to you. How did you get in?" My voice came out higher than normal. "Oh, Jennifer had a copy of your keys made the last time we visited. She said it was for safety in case something happened to you and we needed to get in." I stood there frozen, the coffee cup trembling in my hands. They had violated my privacy in the most basic way possible. "Give me those keys back immediately." Ryan sat on my couch, crossed his arms, and looked at me with that expression of exaggerated patience he used when he thought I was being irrational. "Mom, don't get worked up. The keys are for your own safety. I don't need anyone else to have keys to my house. This is my private property." "Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Jennifer and I have been thinking, and we believe it's time we made some changes here." "What kind of changes?" Ryan got up and started walking around the living room as if he were inspecting a property he planned to buy. "This house has a lot of potential, but it needs to be modernized. The guest bedroom could become a room for the kids. The living room is big enough to be divided to make a game area. And your bedroom, well, it's too big for one person. You are not touching my bedroom. Mom, be reasonable." There are 4 of us and 1 of you. It's logical that the space should be distributed according to each family's needs. This conversation is over, Ryan. I want you to leave my house right now. Instead of getting up, he leaned back more comfortably on the couch. Mom, I'm not leaving. Jennifer and the kids are coming in an hour with some of our stuff. We've already decided that we're going to live here while we look for something bigger and more suitable for everyone. I'm calling the police. Ryan laughed. And what are you going to tell them? That your son came to visit you at your house? I have keys. I have a family relationship with you, and I'm not doing anything illegal. I realized he had planned everything carefully. It was a calculated strategy to take over my house in a way that would be difficult to fight legally. When Jennifer arrived with the kids and 3 large suitcases, I had already called the police. But Ryan was right. There wasn't much they could do. The officer who came explained that family property disputes were complicated. Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but your son has keys to the house and says you gave them permission to stay. Unless you have some document that proves otherwise, this is considered a civil conflict, not a criminal one. Document? What document would I have? Who imagines they need a written contract to prevent their own family from invading their house? That first night, I slept with my bedroom door locked, listening to strange noises in my own house. On the second day, I came home from work to find they had moved all my living room furniture. My favorite couch was pushed into a corner against the window. On the third day, Jennifer had completely reorganized my kitchen. My pots were stored in cabinets I couldn't reach, and my coffee maker had disappeared, replaced by a complicated espresso machine I didn't know how to use. On the 4th day, I found painters in my bedroom. When I got there and saw those men covering my peach-colored walls with white paint, something inside me broke for good. It wasn't just the paint. It was the sheer arrogance of thinking they could change my most intimate space without even consulting me. Mom, we decided this room is too big for you. The kids need more space, and besides, this is going to be the master bedroom of the house. You can use the small bedroom, which is more appropriate for your needs anyway. With what money did you buy furniture? Ryan exchanged a glance with Jennifer before answering. Well, since we all live here now, we thought it was logical to use part of your savings for improvements that benefit the whole family. My savings. They had found my money. How much did you take? Just $2,000 for the bedroom furniture and some improvements for the house. Don't worry, it's an investment. When we sell the house, it's going to be worth much more. It was no longer if they would sell the house, but when. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this continue. I sat in what they had designated as my new room and took out my phone. First, I called Vincent to ask him for the name of the lawyer he had used. Then, I called the bank to report unauthorized access to my accounts. Finally, I looked in the directory for the number of a locksmith. If they wanted a war, they were going to get one. But they didn't know who they were messing with. That night, I waited until the whole house was silent. When all that could be heard was the ticking of the kitchen clock, I came out of my small bedroom with my shoes in my hand. For the last 4 nights, I had been observing and documenting everything. I had taken photos with my old phone, photos that showed my belongings pushed into a corner, my plants thrown into the yard, and the fresh paint covering my beloved walls. I left the house through the back door. The locksmith had told me he would arrive at 5 in the morning. At 5:30 sharp, an older man in a small truck arrived without making a sound. Vincent had recommended his brother-in-law Mark. He changed the front door lock, the lock on the garden gate, and even put a new latch on the back door. When Mark left, I went to work as if it were a normal day. But during my whole shift at the restaurant, my heart was beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I knew that in a few hours, Ryan and Jennifer would discover they could no longer get into my house. The moment came at 2:00 in the afternoon. I was preparing vegetables for the dinner rush when my phone started to ring. Ryan. I let it ring until it stopped. It rang again, immediately. This time, Jennifer. I didn't answer that either. The text messages started coming in one after another. Mom, why did you change the locks? Mom, this is ridiculous. Open the door. Mom, we have all our stuff inside. The kids need their toys. This is kidnapping. We're going to call the police. At 3030, a message came that made me smile for the first time in days. The police said that since it's your house, you can change the locks whenever you want. Perfect. Everything was going according to my plan. When I got home that afternoon, I found the whole family sitting on my front porch. Mom, open that door immediately, Ryan yelled as soon as he saw me. No. What do you mean no? Our stuff is in there. Your stuff shouldn't be in there. I never gave you permission to move into my house. Jennifer got up from the step with her hands on her hips like an indignant queen. Mom, this has gotten beyond ridiculous. We're family. You can't leave us on the street. I'm not leaving you on the street. I'm kicking you out of my house. What's the difference? Ryan came toward me with that intimidating attitude he had perfected over the years. Mom, you're doing something very serious. We're talking about your grandchildren. Are you really going to leave them homeless? Your grandchildren have parents who should provide them with a home. I am not responsible for the bad decisions you two make. For the first time since I had known them, Ryan and Jennifer were speechless. For years, they had used emotional blackmail to get what they wanted from me. But now, they realized that tactic had lost its power. Vincent arrived in his truck at the perfect moment. Afternoon, Madison. Everything okay here? His presence immediately changed the dynamic. Jennifer tried to win Vincent's sympathy. Oh, Mr. Vincent, I hope you can talk to my mother-in-law. She's been acting so weird since she bought this house. She kicked us out of the house without warning, and now she won't open the door for us. Vincent looked at me with a small smile. Ma'am Madison, did these young people have a rental agreement with you? No, I never gave them permission to live here. Then I don't see the problem. This is your property, and you decide who lives here. Ryan was getting more and more desperate. Mr. Vincent, you don't understand the situation. My mom is alone. At her age, she shouldn't live without family nearby. We just want to take care of her. Vincent didn't buy that story. Young man, your mom seems perfectly capable of taking care of herself. She works more hours than a lot of people half her age. But at that moment, the surprise I had been waiting for all day arrived. A police car parked in front of my house, and the same young officer who had come a few days before got out. Mrs. B. Jones, we received a call about a domestic disturbance. What's going on here? Before I could answer, Jennifer ran toward the police officer as if he were her personal savior. Officer, my mother-in-law kicked us out of the house without warning. We have young children and all our stuff is inside. The officer looked at me with curiosity. Ma'am, is it true that these people were living in your house? Yes, but without my permission. They made copies of my keys without consulting me. They moved in without my authorization, and they started making changes to my property without my consent. The officer took out his notebook and started writing. Is there any rental agreement? Any written agreement? There's no agreement because I never gave them permission to live here. Ryan intervened in a desperate voice. Officer, she's my mom. She can't just kick us out like this. It's inhumane. The officer sighed with patience. Sir, the fact that she is your mother doesn't give you automatic rights to her property. If she is the legal owner of the house and there is no rental agreement, she can decide who lives there. But our stuff is inside, Jennifer insisted. Your stuff can be collected under supervision, I explained to the officer. I have no problem with that. I just don't want them to come back to live here. The officer nodded. That seems reasonable, Mrs. Jones. Would you be willing to let them in to collect their belongings and I will supervise? Of course. And that's how an hour later I watched as they took all the things they had brought to take over my space out of my house. When they were done, Jennifer looked at me with a mixture of hatred and desperation. Mom, you're going to regret this. When you're old and you're alone, you're going to remember how you treated us. I'm already old, Jennifer, and I prefer to be alone than in bad company. Ryan made one last attempt at emotional manipulation. Mom, are you really going to choose a house over your family? I'm not choosing a house over my family. I'm choosing my dignity over abuse. They left that night, but I knew this wasn't over. I knew Ryan and Jennifer well enough to know they would look for another way to get what they wanted. The next morning dawned with the sound I had dreaded most, loud knocking on my front door. It was 6030. Police, open the door, please. My heart stopped. I put on a robe and opened the door. 2 officers showed me a search warrant. Mrs. Jones, we have a search warrant. We have received complaints that you are illegally retaining belongings that do not belong to you. What belongings? The officers came in without waiting. One of them was carrying a detailed list. According to the complaint, you have in your possession furniture, cash, and important documents that belong to Ryan Jones and Jennifer Smith. Behind the police came Ryan and Jennifer, both with poorly disguised expressions of triumph. Jennifer was carrying a folder full of papers, as if she had been preparing for this moment for weeks. Officer, I explained to your colleague yesterday that they moved into my house without my permission. I don't have anything that belongs to them. Ryan went up to the main officer with the convincing attitude of a victim. Officer, my mom is confused. She asked us to come live with her because she felt lonely and was afraid to live alone. We brought our furniture, our clothes, and we even contributed money for improvements to the house. The kids, who had been antsy during the car ride, rushed through the house, touching everything without their parents intervening. Sarah, who was not very familiar with Ryan and Jennifer, tried to include them in the conversation. You must be so proud of Madison. Not many people have the willpower to save so much money and purchase their own home at 65. Jennifer forced a smile, the kind she used when she wanted to appear pleasant despite her annoyance. Yes, of course, although we would have preferred she consulted us before making such an important decision. At her age, living alone can be dangerous. The comment landed with a thud, spoiling the celebratory mood. Vincent, who was well aware of my self-sufficiency, having seen how I handled repairs at my house, frowned. Excuse me, but Madison is one of the most independent people I know. She puts in more hours than most people half her age. Jennifer stiffened in her chair, taking Vincent's words as a direct challenge. Well, you don't know the full story. We are her family. We know what's best for her. Jessica set her fork down on her plate with more force than necessary. And what do you think is best for her? That she lives somewhere with a support system where she isn't alone if something happens. This house is way out in a neighborhood that isn't the safest. Olivia, a no-nonsense woman with no time for diplomacy, interjected. Excuse me, but Madison seems perfectly capable of making her own decisions, and from what I can see, this house is in excellent condition. Ryan finally spoke, but his words were more hurtful than his silence. The thing is, you don't understand the full situation. My mom spent all her savings on this house, money she could have used to secure her future. What is she going to use to pay if she gets sick and needs special care? I have health insurance, I replied, feeling my happiness drain away. And I have a job. I'm not an invalid, but Jennifer was already in her stride. Mom, please don't be offended, but you're not at an age to be lifting heavy pots and working on your feet for hours. You're going to get hurt one of these days, and then what are we going to do? Vincent got up from the table, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation. Madison, thank you so much for the delicious food and for having me. I think it's time for me to go. Sarah also got up, but before she left, she leaned in and whispered in my ear, Cousin, don't let anyone take what you worked so hard to get. This house is yours, and your life is yours. Jessica and Olivia left shortly after, but before they walked out the door, Jessica squeezed my hand tightly. If you need anything at all, you call me. You are not alone in this. When it was just Ryan, Jennifer, the kids, and me, the atmosphere became heavy. Jennifer got up to do the dishes without me asking, but her rough movements made her bad mood clear. Mom, we need to talk, Ryan said when the kids went outside to play. I sat on my favorite couch and waited to hear what they had to say. Jennifer dried her hands and sat in front of me with her arms crossed. Mom, let's be honest. This situation can't go on. What situation? You living alone, spending money on a house that's too big for your needs while we're struggling financially? There it was. The real reason for their frustration wasn't my safety or well-being. It was that I had something they wanted and couldn't have. Ryan moved closer, sitting on the arm of my chair, a physical proximity he knew made me uncomfortable. Mom, we've been thinking, what if we sell this house and buy a bigger one where we can all live comfortably? You could have your own room, but you'd have company, and we could help with expenses and maintenance. I don't want to sell my house, I said in the firmest voice I could. Jennifer sighed dramatically. Mom, be practical. With what this house is worth, plus what we can contribute, we could buy something much better in a nicer, safer neighborhood. This house is perfect for me. But not for us, Jennifer murmured, so low I barely heard her. That night, after they left, I sat in my garden and reflected. My moment of triumph had been ruined by the greed of the two people who were supposed to love me most. But I had also learned a valuable lesson. I had true friends who respected my choices and valued my independence. The war had just begun. 3 weeks later, Ryan lost his job at the insurance company. It was the third job he had lost in 2 years, always for the same reasons: tardiness, unexcused absences, and an attitude his bosses called unprofessional. But according to him, all his bosses had been unfair, his coworkers were envious, and the world was conspiring against him. The call came on a Tuesday night as I was soaking my swollen feet after getting home from the restaurant. Ryan sounded desperate, like a child who had broken something and needed his mom to fix it. Mom, I got fired today. My boss said it was because I was late 3 times this month, but it's not fair. The traffic is impossible and my car has problems. What are you going to do now? I asked, even though I knew exactly where this was going. I don't know, Mom. I have to pay rent next week and I have nothing. The kids need school supplies, and Jennifer says we're going to get evicted if we don't pay soon. I felt that familiar knot of guilt and resentment in my stomach that always surfaced when Ryan had money problems. As a mother, my instinct was to protect and help him. But as a woman who had worked her entire life for stability, it bothered me that at 35, he still expected me to be his financial lifeline. Ryan, you need to find another job quickly. There are a lot of places hiring. I know, Mom, but in the meantime, I need help. Can you lend me money for the rent? It's $800. I'll pay you back as soon as I find a job. $800. Almost 2 months of my house maintenance expenses. Money I had earned with a full week of work at the restaurant, waking up at 5 a.m. and getting home at 8 p.m. with sore hands and an aching back. Ryan, I have already lent you a lot of money this year. You need to learn to manage your expenses. Mom, please. It's an emergency. Do you want my kids to be homeless? The emotional manipulation always worked. The guilt of a grandmother who couldn't stand the thought of her grandchildren suffering for their parents' mistakes. But this time, sitting in my own house surrounded by things I had bought with my own hard work, something inside me rebelled. Your children are not going to be on the street. You are going to find a way to solve your problem like the adult you are. The silence on the other end of the line lasted for several seconds. When Ryan spoke again, his voice was cold and calculating. Okay, Mom. I get it. I see what your priorities are now. What do you mean by that? That ever since you bought that house, you've become selfish. Before, you always helped us. But now that you have your little palace, you've forgotten you have family. The words stung. Selfish for wanting to keep the money I had earned. Selfish for having fulfilled a dream that took decades. Selfish for not wanting to continue being my grown children's personal bank. I'm not selfish, Ryan. I'm a woman who worked her whole life for a little security in her old age. Mom, you're 67. What do you need so much money for? What do you need such a big house for? It would be so much smarter for you to come live with us and sell that house. With that money, we could buy something better for everyone. There it was again. The same proposal, but with more urgency. I am not going to sell my house, Ryan, but you're spending it on silly things. Jennifer told me yesterday that she saw you bought new plants for the garden. What good are plants when your son doesn't have a job? The conversation ended with Ryan hanging up on me, which he had never done before. I was left with the phone in my hand, listening to the dial tone, feeling that something had changed between us forever. 2 days later, they showed up at my house without warning on a Friday afternoon. I was just getting home from work when I heard a knock at the door. I thought it was Vincent, but when I opened it, I found Ryan, Jennifer, and the 2 kids on my porch. "Surprise," Jennifer said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We came to visit." They walked in without waiting for an invitation. The kids ran to the backyard. Ryan carried a small bag, and Jennifer had that owner of the house attitude that made me nervous. "What's in that bag?" I asked. "Well, Mom, since you didn't want to help us with the money, the landlord gave us 3 days to vacate the apartment. So, we decided to come stay with you while we look for something cheaper." My heart sank. Stay with me in my house, the sanctuary I worked so hard for. "No," I said immediately. "You can't stay here." Jennifer sat on my couch as if she hadn't heard me. "Why not?" "You have 2 bedrooms, and we're family. It's the least you can do after refusing to help us. Because this is my house, and I decide who lives here." Ryan put the bag on the floor and looked at me with the exaggerated disappointment he used to manipulate me. "Mom, are you seriously going to leave us on the street? Your own grandchildren? I'm not leaving you on the street. You made decisions that led to this situation. You can look for another apartment. You can ask Jennifer's family for help. You can do 1,000 things before invading my space." Jennifer got up with a dramatic flourish. "Invading your space? Listen to how she talks to her own family. We who have always taken care of her, who have always been there for her. When have you taken care of me? I'm the one who has always helped you." "Oh, Mom, don't exaggerate. Don't you remember when you were sick with the flu last year and Ryan went to buy you medicine? One time in 12 years of being a widow, Ryan had gone to the pharmacy for me. It was so exceptional that it had surprised me. That's not enough to justify you taking over my house." Ryan came closer with that condescending smile I hated. "Mom, don't be dramatic. We're not taking over anything. We just need a place to stay for a few weeks while we find something permanent. A few weeks that would turn into months, then years." I knew it. The answer is no. "You can't stay here for a single night." Jennifer changed her tactic from pleading to direct attack. "Fine, Mom. We know what you're really like, but don't forget that when you're old and need someone to take care of you, you'll remember this moment." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you the truth. Family is supposed to help each other, but you only think about yourself." They left that night, but not before Jennifer made one last chilling observation. "Mom, this house is too big for you alone and the neighborhood isn't safe. One of these days you're going to need someone, and I hope we have the heart to do it after how you're treating us." That night I couldn't sleep, not from guilt but from fear. I knew they wouldn't give up easily. I got up several times to check that all the doors were locked. The war had officially begun. The first sign that something was wrong was the sound of keys in my lock on a Saturday morning. I was in the kitchen when I heard that metallic jingle, followed by the sound of my front door opening. But it was impossible. I had the only keys. I came out of the kitchen with my coffee cup and found Ryan in my living room smiling as if he had every right to be there. "Morning, Mom. I came early to talk to you. How did you get in?" My voice was higher than normal. "Oh, Jennifer had a copy of your keys made the last time we visited. She said it was for safety in case something happened to you." I stood there frozen, my coffee cup trembling. They had violated my privacy. "Give me those keys back immediately." Ryan sat on my couch, crossed his arms, and looked at me with exaggerated patience. "Mom, don't get worked up. The keys are for your own safety. I don't need anyone else to have keys to my house. This is my private property." "Well, that's what I wanted to talk about. Jennifer and I think it's time we made some changes here." "What kind of changes?" Ryan got up and walked around the living room as if inspecting a property he planned to buy. "This house has a lot of potential, but it needs to be modernized. The guest bedroom could become a room for the kids. The living room is big enough to be divided to make a game area. And your bedroom." Well, it's too big for one person. You are not touching my bedroom. Mom, be reasonable. There are 4 of us and 1 of you. It's logical that the space should be distributed according to each family's needs. This conversation is over, Ryan. I want you to leave my house right now. Instead of getting up, he leaned back more comfortably. Mom, I'm not leaving. Jennifer and the kids are coming in an hour with some of our stuff. We've already decided that we're going to live here while we look for something bigger. I'm calling the police. Ryan laughed. And what are you going to tell them? That your son came to visit? I have keys. I'm family. I'm not doing anything illegal. I realized he had planned everything. It was a calculated strategy to take over my house. When Jennifer arrived with the kids and 3 large suitcases, I had already called the police. But Ryan was right. There wasn't much they could do. The officer explained that family property disputes were complicated. Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but your son has keys and says you gave them permission. Unless you have a document that proves otherwise, this is a civil, not a criminal, conflict. A document? Who thinks they need a written contract to prevent their family from invading their home? Jennifer was already in my kitchen, cooking as if she owned the place. The kids ran through the house, touching my things. Ryan brought in his big television and connected it without asking. That first night, I slept with my bedroom door locked, listening to strange noises in my own house. On the second day, I came home to find they had moved all my living room furniture. On the third day, Jennifer had completely reorganized my kitchen. My coffee maker was gone, replaced by a complicated espresso machine. On the fourth day, I found painters in my bedroom. When I saw them covering my peach walls with white paint, something inside me broke. It was the sheer arrogance of them thinking they could change my most intimate space without even consulting me. Ryan explained it as if he were being perfectly reasonable. Mom, we decided this room is too big for you. The kids need more space, and besides, this is going to be the master bedroom. You can use the small bedroom, which is more appropriate for your needs anyway. With what money did you buy furniture? Ryan exchanged a glance with Jennifer. Well, since we all live here now, we thought it was logical to use part of your savings for improvements that benefit the whole family. My savings. They had found my money. How much did you take? Just $2,000 for the bedroom furniture and some improvements. Don't worry, it's an investment. That's a lie, I said. Jennifer opened her folder and pulled out several papers. Officer, here are receipts for the furniture we bought. I also have text messages where my mother-in-law asks us to come live with her. My blood ran cold. I had never sent those messages. They had fabricated false evidence. The officer examined the documents. Mrs. Jones, these messages appear to be from your phone number. In one, you literally say, Ryan, come live with me. This house is too big for me alone. I never sent those messages. I don't know how they faked them. Ryan intervened in a sad, worried voice. Officer, my mom has been acting very strange lately. She forgets things. She says she didn't do things she did. We're worried about her mental health. There was the new strategy. If they couldn't get my house financially, they would try to have me declared mentally incompetent. Officer, I work 40 hours a week. I manage my own finances. There's nothing wrong with my mental health. But Jennifer was ready. Mom, the other day she forgot she had invited us to dinner. And last week she called Ryan 3 times to ask the same thing. Those are clear signs of early onset dementia. The main officer looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and suspicion. Mrs. Jones, do you have any document that proves this house belongs to you exclusively? Of course. It's in my bedroom. As I went to get the papers, I heard Ryan whispering to the officers, she's been very paranoid lately. She says we want to rob her, that we're conspiring against her. It's typical of people with senile dementia. I returned with the deed, my identification, and all the documents that proved the property was mine. The officer reviewed them. These documents are in order. The house is registered in your name exclusively. But Jennifer didn't give up. Officer, that doesn't change the fact that she invited us to live here and that we contributed financially. We have rights as tenants. At that moment, my phone rang. It was Vincent. I quickly explained the situation. He told me he would be there in 5 minutes with the lawyer he had recommended. "Officer, my legal representative is on his way." Ryan became nervous. "We don't need to wait for any lawyer. This is a simple family matter." When Vincent arrived with attorney Michael Jenkins, the dynamic changed. The lawyer immediately asked to see the documents Jennifer had presented. "Officer, may I review this alleged evidence?" He examined the text messages with a magnifying glass. "These messages are forged. It can be clearly seen in the metadata. They were created using an app to generate fake conversations. Furthermore, presenting false evidence is a federal crime. These people could face charges." Jennifer immediately turned pale. I didn't know. Someone else must have. "Don't finish that sentence," the lawyer warned her. Ryan tried one last desperate tactic. "Officer, no matter what these papers say, my mom needs help. She can't live alone at her age." Attorney Jenkins addressed him directly. "Young man, your mother is a competent adult who has the right to make her own decisions. The fact that you don't like those decisions doesn't give you the right to fabricate false evidence or invade her property." The main officer closed his notebook and addressed Ryan and Jennifer. "Based on what I've seen, you have no legal rights to this property. The text messages are forged, there is no valid rental agreement, and Mrs. Jones is clearly competent. If you continue to harass her, you will face charges for trespassing." Ryan and Jennifer left that morning defeated and humiliated. But before he left, Ryan looked at me with a coldness I had never seen before. "Mom, you won this battle, but you're all alone now. Completely alone." His words were designed to hurt me, to make me feel guilty. But for the first time, loneliness didn't scare me. I'm not alone, Ryan. I have true friends, a job that satisfies me, and a house that is completely mine. I have my self-respect, which I almost lost trying to please you. After they left, Attorney Jenkins helped me understand my legal options. I decided not to press charges, but I asked him to prepare a restraining order. That afternoon, when I got home, my house was exactly as I had left it, in silence, at peace, completely mine. I sat in my garden with a cup of coffee, looking at the flowers I had planted. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. I didn't have to listen to criticism or justify my decisions. Jessica came to visit me that night and asked me how I felt. "Free," I replied. "For the first time in my life, I feel completely free. I had learned something important. Sometimes choosing your own happiness means disappointing the people you love. Sometimes defending your dignity means cutting ties with family who sees you as a resource rather than a person. Sometimes chosen loneliness is better than toxic company." I still work at the restaurant and take care of my garden. Ryan and Jennifer have not contacted me again, and that's okay. Maybe someday when they learn to respect me, we can rebuild a relationship, but it will be on my terms. In the meantime, I am 67 years old. I have my own home, true friends, and the peace that comes from knowing that no one can take away what I worked so hard to get. Sometimes, silence is the most powerful justice of all.